Okay, so just again to sort of illustrate, right? We'll do this just as a different way to do it. So again, we're here, little person, right? And we are surrounded by this strain, this pressure. It's weighing on our minds of making money, right? And so we know that's going to end up being the goal in the end, right? Is that we have, money that we're trying to achieve, right? We'll do triple colors because we're fabulous wealthy and we just want options because that's what we live with, right? So with this then, basically what classical strength saying is that we know this pressure is here. We know this is kind of the end goal if you think about society. Most people on one path are going to go up through this way, right? And there are accepted means to go, and they may or may not get here. Maybe they face some barriers, like right here or something like that. Who knows? But that's their goal. Then there are other people who follow unaccepted means. Unaccepted means, and they end up not committing crime, right? So there are these two different pathways that fall in. And that's if you follow an innovator's path, right? So this is the conformist, and this is if you innovate. So a lot of the research that exists doesn't really look into classifying people into if they are innovators or they're ritualists or retreatists or whatever. Like there's not a lot of research on that. More often than not, though, a lot of the research looks into reasons why or areas without opportunity and their propensity to commit crime, right? So what does this tell us then? So what does this theory make predictions about, right? So what this theory is saying then is that without opportunity, this leads to an increase in the likelihood of committing crime, right? So in some ways, right, this is making a statement about areas. So it's saying that in certain areas of a city, so certain neighborhoods where there's a lack of opportunity because there's not a lot of investment in terms of jobs, in terms of education, in terms of infrastructure, transportation, things like that. But it also makes it an argument about how individuals who may be acting within those strain areas could be more inclined to commit crime, right? So there's a lot of different reasons why this can come into place, right? Why someone's going to feel more pressure to commit crime, right? So without this opportunity, right, if we think just as a little key thing, if we think about, which is already discussed, we've had education, you have better access, you are aware of more different kinds of jobs, you have better transportation, you can go work to different places, you're not having to, sacrifice other things. If it's a better paying job, you have freedom to do a lot more things, right? So with this then, right, this is seen as what drives someone to commit crime, especially for wealth acquisition committing crime. So things that are focused on people getting wealth. And so if we think about crimes that have a motivation for that, right? There's a lot of different things, right? So one, you could think about drug dealing, right? Easiest way to make money if you have access to drugs. People want to use drugs in this country. They're willing to pay for them, even though it totally screws up their life, right? At the same time, right, you could also be working in a white-collar job, feeling a lot of pressure, and so maybe you embezzle money or you cheat on accounts or something like that in order to hide money. That was seen as a major plot point in the movie Ghost, where Patrick Swayze's friend slash work partner was basically hiding money for the mob or something, and was trying to take a cut off of that. Patrick Swayze wins in the end, right? Plot twist. Of course, is there a movie where Patrick Swayze doesn't always win, right? I mean, if we had to rank Patrick Swayze movies, I think number one has got to be Roadhouse, right? It's got to be Roadhouse for sure. Then maybe Ghost, and maybe Dirty Dancing. I haven't seen Point Break, but maybe that's one. So anyway, we have this, white collar embezzlement. We also have people who are going to be more interested in robbing someone to do that. I guess in some cases, right, you could be willing to kill people, right, to do that. Again, the overarching pressure to do this, right, comes from the need to make money, right? So because it's an all-suffocating, over-dominant social institution in this country, that is what leads people to committing more crime. So where do we go from then? How do we, measure, something like this, right? So typically what ends up happening from a couple areas, right? Let's think about one correlate, right, in poverty, right? We know that in areas where there tends to be more crime are areas that are particularly poverty-stricken. Under this theory, right, this would make the explanation that because of a lack of opportunity, these people are frustrated by their inability to gain wealth, and so they end up turning to crime in order to, earn money, survive, in order to be seen as success, right? These areas also tend to be populated with people of ethnic minorities, and so what this is saying, like, this theory does not make claims about, certain people are more likely to commit crime, right? It's only saying certain people under these conditions are more likely to commit crimes, right? So it's more likely to happen in areas with a lack of opportunity. Because these areas are populated more, that's where, you see an uptick in crime, right? So that's where the rationale comes from, up in crime because of low opportunity and where someone is located in society geographically. The other part is we think about, I guess biological sex is the right one, right? When we think about biological sex, right? If we think about men historically, and from like a traditional gender roles kind of way, right? Men are seen as more likely or more pressured to bring home the bacon, as it were, more likely to be seen in the workplace to provide because of old gender roles, right? So men feel pressure more. Because of existing societal pressures and and like duties and things like that, right? So I'll leave age for y'all to figure out, right? Like, why do you guys think age might be a big issue? But I guess if we start thinking about other criteria, right? If you start thinking about scope of this theory, right? So it wasn't designed to answer all crimes, right? It does focus on, acquisition or crimes or that are instrumental is another way of saying it, right? So if these people commit instrumental crimes, they're more likely to do something to earn wealth or money of some kind, right? So it's typically limited to that perspective, right? Is that good or bad? Depends on your point of view. Does it have to explain everything, or does it only have to explain most behavior most of the time, right? That's up to you. Testability is a little bit more difficult because depending if you're making a macro level argument, so an argument about places and larger areas versus making an argument about individuals, how you test that becomes a little bit more tricky, right? So do you look at it in terms of poverty? Do you look at it in terms of, a lack of opportunity? Moreover, how do you precisely, measure that, right? It's also a little bit more difficult and unclear to think about, like, how do people adapt? How do people move into a certain area? Like, so we think about these, what makes someone like a ritualist versus an innovator versus a conformist, like whatever, right? It becomes tricky. So it's tricky depending on what you're trying to measure. So because of that, it becomes difficult to do that. if we think about parsimony, it's interesting is that if we think about like, yeah, it's easy to maybe accept the idea that, there was at one time a, huge pressure to earn a lot of money in American society, and that what drives behavior, right? It becomes a little bit more difficult when we start thinking about all of these, adaptations to these goals that we have. So, it's kind of hit or miss, right? So it depends on your point of view. On how you get there and how you go about it, right? So, but that's also something that's open for discussion. That'd be really good for Packback this week. So anyway, we'll kind of